If you happen to be one that followed along with my review videos on the episodes of Moon Knight, I thought one of the weakest parts of Moon Knight was the filmmaking itself. Some CGI and lighting issues here and there, but mostly shoddy camera work. And now this is just my opinion, and I adored a lot about the show, so well done. But that criticism I have is very much a reason I've been looking forward to the Moon Knight episode of Assembled. I was so curious if they would talk about the Shaky Cam Issues and why they chose to make this such a loose loose show, if you know what I mean. So let's talk about the new Assembled. Hello, fellow Disney Plus watcher. It's nice to talk with you about Disney Plus today. If you love Disney as much as I do and enjoy talking about it, why not click the subscribe button to stay up to date, and please give it a like because it helps the video and the channel. Thank you so much. Okay, if you haven't seen the latest episode of Assembled, you could watch this video to get an idea of what has been discussed if you don't want to invest your time in it. But if not, yeah, there's going to be spoilers of Moon Knight, the show obviously, and this documentary. So the whole thing opens with a piece of monologue from Ethan Hawke in the show, a ticking clock in the background, and a very cool little trailer. It's actually a great thing that they could have used in the marketing, but it gives away spoilers, so I don't know about that. But the feel of this opener was very cool. So just to jump right into it, my criticisms about the show, the technical stuff, like, it hasn't been addressed at all because they lean so much into Oscar Isaac and his performance, the team that made all the statues and the sets, and I actually loved this episode. I think it's the best. I think so. Maybe next to Eternals. I can't remember, but I think this is the best one. But no, they didn't discuss what I was so interested in the first place. And the music, also the composer, and it's beautiful music. I know it's great music to listen to it in isolation, but it was so overbearing in the show, and it took me out of it. And they also didn't talk about that, so they talked about the good stuff, man. They talked about the good stuff, and it's really interesting how much they leaned into the comics, what they drew from it, and what they didn't drew from it. So I like the little comic they showed of the different personalities grabbing onto Khonshu, and the first one is Marc Spector saying, "I am Marc Spector," and then Stephen, "I am Stephen Grant," and then Jake Lockley, "I am Jake Lockley, and we are going to be okay. We are going to live with who we are." And then he breaks the head of Khonshu, and he says, "We are Moon Knight, and we never needed you." Now, epic. But this is an interesting thing. Something I disagree with in the show. It's not the biggest criticism I have because it's right at the end of episode 6. But one of the biggest criticisms is that they actually don't leave Steven behind. They take him back, and they now coincide with each other. They play into each other, and he embraces the chaos. And I don't think that was the way to go, but they drew that from the comics, because that is what I'm reading here. So that's interesting that I actually disagree with a story decision that was very much an integral part of the story of Moon Knight in the comics. But no, in a world, like, to take it a bit step further, just to ramble here for a second, in a world where everybody seems to be in turmoil, in a world where everybody seems to be confused about what they want in life, what they value, who they are. No, but seriously, we are kind of now on unstable grounds, and we aren't sure. So having a show, Moon Knight, to tell us, hey, it's okay that you are dealing with this, and it's okay that you need help. Let me help you lose this persona, because that persona is purely based on trauma. It's purely a defense mechanism. We have to remember that. That's so empowering. But instead, they, at the last second, try to make it into an empowering thing. So it's okay to be confused, stay confused, and just embrace that, and just be mental, be crazy your whole life, and don't deal with it, don't face it, don't face your demons, but live with your demons. That's kind of, I know I'm rambling, but that's my slight disappointment in the story handling. But they drew it out of the comics, and that's interesting to see. So they did explain very well why something I didn't like, particularly why they did it. So I really appreciate that. And then also they let me know, Ethan Hawke let me know, hey, this is also how you can watch the show. He said this, and I quote, "You can make a very compelling case that I'm not playing the villain. It's possible to watch this show and think that this human being has created these visions of his psychiatrist who's trying to alleviate his pain. And he wants his pain because his pain gives him his identity. Because a lot of us store our identities in our hurts. And so he turns me into a villain, talking about Marc Spector creating this facade that his therapist is actually an Amit-possessed Egyptian kind of villain. And this is actually how I watched the show and how I hoped it was gonna turn out. I hoped it was turned completely on its head, and instead that's one of the reasons why I was so disappointed with the last episode. But I actually really admire them showing me this is actually the story we're telling, and a part of it I don't agree with. But this is why we did it. And then this is a way to watch the show also. And you're not wrong. It's just a way to look at it. So that's interesting. And they also talked about Khonshu being like an addiction to Mark. Because Khonshu is such a great character in the show. So they touched on that. And how I would suggest watch the episode. They really explain well why it is that Mark holds on to Khonshu even if he doesn't know it. Again, going back to the comics, they also took great liberties with it. So Moon Knight and Mr. Knight, those costumes were actually switched up. So Steven was a very different character in the comics, a more serious, more not such a goofy character. So he was Moon Knight. And then Mark was that second persona, and he was Mr. Knight. He was more of the cool gentleman, and so that's why he had the suit. But because Steven is the way he is in Moon Knight, they actually switched it up. And it's so interesting to learn the little details, like when Oscar Isaac heard about this project going to film in London, he actually, he thought of the British accent. That wasn't a producer thing, that wasn't a writing thing, that was later on in the process, and they explain how that happened and the table reads they had, and it's cool to know these details. And also I read some articles or some comments of you guys. People were talking about this already, but they elaborated on it. Oscar Isaac played with his brother in the scenes where he was Mark and Steven at the same time, and he had to rehearse these scenes very thoroughly from two perspectives and two paths. He had to remember his blocking for the scene, and normally an actor has to remember his path, the way where he walks and his blocking for one part, but he has to do twice the work. So he explains what went into that and how it was twice the work normally an actor would do. So it's interesting how they did Khonshu and Tawaret. Of course, no mocap, no motion capture, but just two people. In the case of Tawaret, the actual voice actress with a little with a stick just to fix the eye line of Oscar Isaac playing with Khonshu or Tawaret. It's very interesting how they did that. I thought it was like something like mocap, but no, actually not. And they dived into the Egyptian mythology, which was interesting. The idea of avatars, Egyptian gods choosing people to do stuff for them, that was rooted in real mythology, so they brought that in. And the idea of an Ushabti, the little action figures, no, I'm kidding, not action figures, but the little statues in ancient Egypt, that was like the thing that helped the king or a pharaoh with the journey to the afterlife. And all sorts of visual hints were placed in the show that I wasn't aware of. So in the beginning, somewhere in the beginning of this documentary, they showed some very quick shots, and one of them was the boat that was in the aquarium. And I had no idea, because back then when we saw episode 1, we had no idea that boat was gonna, Tawaret and the whole Duat and the whole afterlife thing. We didn't know about that stuff. So seeing that, I was like, oh my, it was already in plain sight the whole time. And the end titles were the best end titles of any documentary I've seen, because they showed us the comic version and the show version of various ideas and scenes. And there's actually so much they drew out of the comic books. During the end title sequence, that's where it lands. Like, wow, they've been talking about the comic books in this documentary for 20-30 minutes now, but now I get it. So that's how much you've really committed. They really committed here. This is not just this is something else. This is not Hawkeye, right? Hawkeye is just a fun little quirky Christmas show. Here they did the work. So a lot of things we discussed. I mean, great assembled episode, great stuff. They talked a bit about the diversity aspect of having May Kalamawi as Layla, and how she is an example for Egyptian, because she has Egyptian roots, and that's cool. I mean, I'm always for diversity. I think nobody's against that, but I guess what I want to say is, stop talking about it. You're right on the money. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is as diverse as it can be. I don't want to forget or cast people out, but they have it just has to make sense for the story, and that's it. Especially from now on, we have to be over it by now, because if you make it a firm goal for the coming 10-20 years, and you keep pushing on it, in 20 years, there's no diversity anymore, because in your constant struggle to constantly add up to more diversity, it won't work if you keep going like this on this trajectory. We had some extra attention to it. That's great. We're here now. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is as diverse as it can be, and just keep casting whoever you need. And then the diversity will maintain itself. We have to stop talking about it eventually, because it has to be a given. So can we please drop it? I'm so done with it, because I like how diverse it is now, and don't overdo it from here. I really enjoyed this, even though it didn't touch on the things I didn't like about Moon Knight. But what did you think about this assembled episode? Let me know in the comments below, and add D+ on the top of your comment if you want me to give my thoughts on your thoughts in the coming Sunday video. I'm thinking about wrapping this up. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in my thoughts on Moon Knight's episodes, you'll find it right here or in the description. Did you like this video? Then there's this simple way to show support. Thank you so much. I'll be back in 2 days with Obi-Wan Kenobi. Okay, for now, have a wonderful day, and see ya.